coming up next on In the Game.
When the limitless opportunity came around, it felt like something I could be passionate about.
We bring you a story of a Penn State football player that had to hang it up early.
Next, a bounce-back season was in the works for a Division III basketball player, but sealing the deal isn't always easy.
We were clearly the better team.
And what's sweeter than a perfect game? We introduce you to one coach that has one sugary side hustle.
This year, especially since I didn't start until the second week of February, I definitely knew that I was running the baseball season.
Plus, we bring you the story of a local athlete known for his talents on the mat and microphone.
I didn't want to go, but Dad was like, well, you're going to wrestling practice. And I was like terrified, very, very scared.
And we check out a Penn State figure skater who battled through adversity but never lost her edge.
So it was just really tricky trying to fit it in with your class schedule. So then some of us had more late nights, or some of us couldn't even get to the rink.
When I signed the extension in 2019, I said, this is my last day job, and nothing has changed.
Lastly, we take a look into the career and legacy of Penn State Athletic Director Sandy Barber. In the Game starts right now. Hello and welcome to In the Game. I'm Derek Hyde.
And I'm Andre Magara. Get ready as we take you from Happy Valley to Washington, D.C., and some places in between to showcase the best stories in college and high school sports.
We start off with Zach Donaldson, who took a dive into the life of a former Penn State athlete.
Many try, but a very small percentage of high school and college athletes actually realize their dreams and make it to the pros. Aeneas Hawkins knows this firsthand, but just because your impact on the field comes to a halt doesn't mean it has to entirely.
Aeneas Hawkins has always had a passion for sports. Growing up, he played with footballs instead of toys, and he watched ESPN instead of cartoons. It helped that he came from a line of football players, with 7 family members getting time in the NFL, including his dad Artrell and Uncle Andrew. A former 4-star recruit, Hawkins grew up to be a defensive tackle on the Penn State football team for 4 years and had dreams of following in his family's footsteps. He had to figure out what the next phase of his life would look like when injuries forced him to step away from the game early.
For Hawkins, this was once the dream, but now he plans on tackling the business side of the game.
Hawkins has a large following on TikTok and is set to graduate in the spring with a degree in broadcast journalism. He initially thought that might be the route for him, but instead, he had an opportunity to do something different. He saw a chance to help other athletes like himself. Sean Clifford, his former teammate, asked Hawkins to join a new team with a new title. He would be the Chief Athlete Officer for Clifford's newfound company, Limitless NIL, the first agency put together by solely student athletes.
When the limitless opportunity came around, it felt like something I could be passionate about. Giving back to the athlete, being an athlete myself, seeing the highs and lows through my own family's experiences and my friends. I mean, that's a life that I've really lived, and the passion I have for it is real as well.
Navigating NIL is new territory for everyone, but being an athlete himself, Hawkins knows a thing or two to assist him.
Obviously, now that kids can profit off their name, image, and likeness, I want to help them maximize that. I have a passion for the athlete, coming from that background, and I also understand, having medically retired, that most of these kids who have dreams of playing in the NFL, the NBA, the WNBA, most of them are not going to realize those dreams, just from a percentage standpoint. So while those kids are still able to profit off of really the brand and the marketability that they had now, I want to make sure they can capitalize off that while it's still there, because you don't know how long it lasts.
When Hawkins left the game, finding his calling post-football wasn't exactly straightforward. He knows what athletes are going through and wants to make sure that they're well-equipped for when the time does come to hang up their jersey.
That's another big part of what Limitless is doing. That's another big part of what my role is. Once we sign kids, the first thing that I do is help figure out what their vision is for what they do off of the field. And that's, once we figure that out, we help identify different ways that we can help the athlete see themselves as more than just the competitor that they are on the field.
Hawkins followed his heart and has found himself a home with Limitless and its athletes. Moving forward, they'll aim to make an impact, one athlete at a time.
Hawkins is helping Limitless guide and educate athletes with the desire to one day become the standard for how NIL is approached, all while in the meantime finding his footing in the next phase of his own life as well. For In the Game, I'm Zach Donaldson.
Now we head out to the East Coast to visit Catholic University in Washington, D.C.
Micaiah Binion joins us in the studio to tell the story of a basketball team coming off a season to remember.
They haven't won a championship since 2001. This team and everyone rooting for them had high hopes of this season going a little differently. One senior, all the way from New York City, shares his feelings about his final season playing basketball. From New York City to Washington, D.C., this kid had a dream of winning it all on the court. Jalen Nuges, a New York City native, moved to D.C. to attend Catholic University where he would be playing D3 basketball.
Had losing records both seasons, so, but I didn't I wasn't really worried about that because, I didn't really play, my sophomore year I played somewhat of a big role, but, it wasn't, a role where I could really affect a lot of things. So I wasn't really tripping over us not being good. And also we had a new head coach. It was a whole lot of factors that went into why we weren't performing the way we should be performing.
With them not doing well his first 2 years and his third season being interrupted by COVID, only allowing them to play 8 games, Jalen went into his last and final season with high hopes that this would be one for the books, where they would finally get to win a championship.
Going into my senior year, we were pretty prepped for a big year. A lot of people believed that we were going to be really good because of the success we had with a lot of young guys my junior year.
With this being their most successful season, starting it off right with a 7-winning game streak, they set the tone for how they wanted to dominate the landmark conference. Catholic University worked their way up to becoming the 3rd seed and making it to the semifinals. But just when things start to look good, there's always a catch.
So we faced Jude University in Madison, New Jersey. So that game was my last game ever playing organized basketball. It shouldn't have been because we were kicking their ass the whole game. We were clearly the better team.
Before entering the second half, Catholic had a 20-point lead, giving them enough cushion to win the game. But once they entered the second half and 6 minutes left, they let Drew come back and end their season for good.
It kind of hurt. It really hurt ending it that way. And what hurt even more, what made it even more hurtful was we ended up being on SportsCenter, the top story of the day type. That's national TV. It don't really get any bigger than that.
The team was devastated about their loss, but with the season being over and Jalen ending his basketball career not how he hoped, he wishes his former teammates the best in their upcoming years while he plans on finishing his academic career strong and getting his degree this year at the end of May. Catholic University almost won it all, but couldn't quite deliver. With another season coming up, this team still has another chance at the championship. For In the Game, I'm Micaiah Binion.
It wouldn't be anything without my teammates, without my family, without all my friends, and just everyone supporting me through everything.
Coming up later, we hear from one Penn State student who found success on the ice. Marissa Olchaker's support system helped her reach new heights despite some obstacles. Stay tuned for the story.
Thanks, Andre. Let's move on to something new, something different, something sweet. Zach Lambert joins us now with more.
He's always searching for something sweet, like a home run swing or a strikeout to ice the game. One high school baseball coach in Eastern PA has a unique passion that he pursues right in his backyard. He has the most important job in the park. He can change the game with a split-second decision. He's a stop sign and a green light. Mick Sugar is the head baseball coach at Northampton High School. He's been there since 2011 and even led the Concrete Kids to a district title in 2019. He's always in search of the winning recipe on the field, but he's found a different winning recipe, right in his own backyard.
I just like being outside, number one. So looking at the woods and knowing what was there and looking at the maples, it was always something that I wanted to do. And then the one year I finally just said, I'm gonna do it.
Sugar specializes in maple syrup, with nearly 100 trees lining the back edge of his property. Each of these blue pipes taps syrup out of the trees and runs it into a barrel near the house. But the process to make the syrup isn't that simple.
You're basically looking for like a 6 to 8 week window weather-wise first. That's gonna be like in the 40s during the day and freezing at night. That's your most ideal time for sap to be running up and down. That's usually anywhere from like mid-January through starting early February, and that'll run through mid to end of March.
The problem with that? It runs into baseball season. That made this year especially tough. Heating devices turn the sap into syrup inside the shack. It requires specific temperatures and lots of attention to churn out the sweet stuff. When he's not making syrup, he's making honey, and he gets a bit of help from his family on that front.
So you just go back and check on the bees, make sure they're doing good and that the queen's still alive. And also with collecting honey, I'd go back and sit with him. And it's just really cool to see, what the bees do and how they make the honey.
Right now, it's a big time commitment that sometimes bleeds into the baseball season. But the peace of the woods keeps him coming back. He says he boils syrup for 20 hours a weekend. And while he waits, he takes a trip to the tree stand to take in the scenery. He'll have more time to dedicate to his craft when he decides to stop coaching. But now, his two passions go on at once, making Sugar's Sugar Shack the most famous syrup in the East Penn Conference. Northampton has made the playoffs 10 consecutive years under Sugar, and he says he had one of his most productive syrup seasons to date this past year. For In the Game, I'm Zach Lambert.
Now we return to Center County.
Lexi Ladline joins us in the studio with the story of a local wrestler with talents on the mat and at the mic.
Thanks, guys. Wrestling in high school can be quite demanding, balancing school, work, training, family time, and personal interests all factor in. But one Bellefonte wrestler seems to have it down to a science. Take a look.
Student, athlete, son, brother, and soon-to-be high school graduate. Jude Swisher may be all of these things, but he is also so much more. Jude is currently a senior on the wrestling team at Bellefonte High School. After moving to State College at a young age, Jude spends his days working on his homeschool curriculum when he isn't on the wrestling mat. Oh, and did I forget to mention, he's one of 7 children.
So I'm Jude, I'm 18. My siblings are Abby, who is 16, Ezra, 14, Lucy, 12, Jeremiah is 7, James is 5, little Genevieve is only 8 weeks old.
Jude began his youth wrestling career at just 6 years old. He was introduced to the sport by his father. However, it wasn't love at first sight.
I didn't want to go, but Dad was like, well, you're going to wrestling practice. And I was terrified.
He would come to love the sport and quickly became a very talented wrestler. In 8th grade, he joined the M2 Training Center, a wrestling gym owned by Penn State alumni David Taylor. Wrestling became more than just a high school sport for Jude when he started the Home Mat Advantage podcast with partner Sam Herring. The two interviewed wrestling stars like Coach Taylor and were named Wrestling Insider News Magazine's Journalists of the Year in 2020. Since then, the podcast has taken a backseat to competing, but Jude spoke about the impact it had on his life.
It was one of the most valuable experiences of my growing up years.
Jude was now just a freshman wrestling at State High, but transferred to Bellefonte his sophomore year under Coach Michael Maney. Coach said Jude has always had high expectations for himself and consistently looks to better the team.
He knew what his goals were, and he knew that he was going to do whatever it takes to reach those goals. And as he got mature and, became a senior this year, in some aspects, it was like having another, coach in the room.
Jude collected countless accolades and placed in the top 5 at the PIAA championships every year at Bellefonte. Unfortunately, he ultimately fell short of capturing that state championship title. As Jude's high school career comes to a close, what is next in store for this Bellefonte wrestler, you may ask? He signed his letter of commitment to attend UPenn and wrestle at the Division I level. Coach Maney said he was one of the first to know.
He just was extremely excited. He called me, I think, pretty much shortly after the visit, and he's like, "This is where I want to go."
This fall will be the first time in years that Jude will be in an in-person classroom setting. When asked how he thought Jude would adapt at UPenn, Coach said he thought Jude was well prepared.
You know, he's mature above his years. He's a great student, thriving to get better there, and wrestling as well. So he's, I guess the best way to sum it up, he's the total package. He's the real deal, and I'm just excited for him.
With his incredible past behind him and an exciting future ahead of him, Jude is living in the moment, just being Jude.
Swisher says he is looking to pursue an accounting or finance degree at the University of Pennsylvania while preparing to wrestle at the Division I level and finally capture that #1 spot. For In the Game, I'm Lexi Lyman.
Joe Paterno is no longer the head football coach, effective immediately.
10 years ago, Penn State went through some of its darkest days. The Jerry Sandusky scandal. The president, athletic director, and head football coach Joe Paterno all fired. Penn State needed new leadership then. Now, Penn State is looking for new leadership again. Coming up later in the Game, we say goodbye to Penn State athletic director Sandy Barber. And we will get to that story shortly. But switching gears, let's send it over to Andre Magaro for a Penn State national champion you might not know.
It's been a long journey the past few years for Penn State club sports. But despite this, one figure skater recently put in a performance for the ages, but not without a little help. Penn State junior Marissa Olchaker leads a busy life. When she's not pursuing her degree, you can find her at the rink, lacing up her skates as a member of the Penn State club figure skating team. However, Olchaker isn't your average collegiate skater. She's a national champion. She took home gold in April for her solo performance during the International Dance Pattern event, an honor she was able to enjoy with those closest to her.
So the dance I did was the Yankee Polka, which you have to be extremely precise with it, and your feet move really fast with it. So when I got off the ice, I honestly had no idea if I was going to place or not. I was talking to one of my teammates. The results came out, and she turns around and she goes, and she had this huge, just surprised, amazing face, and the feeling of medaling was just incredible, and I got to share with all my friends and family and teammates.
Olchaker was the lone individual national champion on a Penn State squad that placed 11th overall in the competition, a team that shares a tight-knit bond after repeated trials. This year was the first Penn State club figure skating had competed since early 2020, and the first time it competed in nationals in 20 years. The team qualified for the 2020 competition, but it was canceled due to COVID-19. The struggle doesn't end there. Penn State club sports teams were unable to compete on campus during the pandemic, so the closest rink for Olchaker and her teammates was 45 minutes away, Galactic Ice Arena in Altoona.
It was just really tricky trying to fit it in with your class schedule, and then some of us had more late nights, or some of us couldn't even get to the rink.
The team was divided by circumstance, but it would soon come back together, thanks to the help of one man. John Kalbach, vice president of the Nittany Valley Figure Skating Club, was able to share ice time at Penn State's Pagula Ice Arena with the team, an opportunity to not only help them find regular practice, but create a lasting impact, even as a team photographer.
So I think of them as daughters in some senses. They're, again, intelligent, funny, hardworking, smart. I mean, I can't say, enough good things about the collegiate team.
The team recently repaid the favor, honoring Kalbach at its spring gala as a thank you for all he's done.
I hope they take away that I was someone that helped them achieve a goal that they were able to set for themselves while they were here at college. They were able to still continue to skate and enjoy something they've done most of their lives, for most of them, as well as be able to get their degree.
The efforts of people like Kalbach have helped Penn State figure skating reach historic heights in uncertain times. But Olchaker says skating represents something greater than individual and team honors.
Being a national medalist, being on the team, everything just makes me so happy to think about, but it wouldn't be anything without my teammates, without my family, without all my friends, and just everyone supporting me through everything.
Now, the team skates on, fully back in its home at Pagula, with the past few years serving as a reminder of what a little kindness and persistence can accomplish. Olchaker will return to the Penn State figure skating team next season, as the team looks for a return trip to nationals, hoping to build off its recent success. For In the Game, I'm Andre Magaro.
Thanks, Andre, for that story. Next fall will be a new era for Penn State. A new president will sit in Old Main. And athletics will see a new face in charge for the first time in 8 years. College athletics are constantly changing.
Athletic directors change, coaches change.
Players have 4 short years of eligibility, coaches are fired and leave all programs, but Penn State has been steady. There's been just 3 football coaches and 2 athletic directors this century.
And really an honor and a privilege to serve this community, serve this university, and most importantly, serve our student athletes.
Sandy Barber is retiring after 8 years as the athletic director and vice president for intercollegiate athletics.
When I signed the extension in 2019, I said this is my last AD job, and nothing has changed.
Barber's path to Penn State started over 40 years ago. She was a 2-sport athlete at Wake Forest.
She played both basketball and field hockey in her college days. But once she graduated, she put the basketball behind her and became an assistant field hockey coach, first at UMass, then at Northwestern.
She landed a promotion as an assistant athletic director at Northwestern after coaching for a short time. From there, she took the same job at Tulane before being promoted to her first athletic director position there in 1996. In 1999, she resigned and worked as an assistant with Notre Dame and left for California Berkeley in 2004. According to San Francisco area media outlet SFGate, in October 2014, the Cal football and basketball teams had shockingly low worst-in-conference graduation rates. SFGate reported $445 million in debt at the time of her Cal exit.
I think what it really boils down to is I stayed too long.
She achieved something no other woman had before. She is still the only female athletic director at both Tulane and Cal.
A great female AD. I don't want to be a great female AD. I want to be a great AD. I want to be known as a great AD.
She came to Happy Valley to also become the first female athletic director at Penn State in 2014.
So for our student athletes, our female student athletes, to be able to see somebody in her position be so successful, it truly is inspirational. So she is definitely going to be missed.
Barber flipped the Penn State scandal narrative in no time. She will retire after helping Penn State teams to 6 NCAA championships and 39 conference titles.
But the real definition of success for Barber was the finances. The year before the COVID-19 pandemic, Penn State made $7 million, a flip script from Cal. And then the year of the pandemic, Penn State lost $24 million, which sounds like a lot. But let's compare that against rival Big Ten schools. Michigan lost $48 million over that time, and Ohio State, $63. And if that doesn't do it for you, dozens of programs across the country had to cut sports teams, like Iowa and Michigan State. Penn State over that time had to cut 0.
She brought Penn State through some of its darkest days.
Joe Paterno is no longer the head football coach, effective immediately.
But helped make some memories along the way.
One of our core values of our team is leave a legacy. You want to leave the place better than it was before. She has navigated some incredibly challenging issues during her tenure as athletic director, and we've come out a stronger program. And
next year turns a new chapter for Penn State. Despite NIL, the fresh faces, and rebounding from COVID, the championship dreams will remain the same.
And it's possible Penn State has its next athletic director already. ESPN and others reported the school is finalizing a deal to replace Barber with current Boston College athletic director Patrick Kraft. Barber plans on spending at least a year in Center County before leaving for the West Coast.
That's going to do it for this episode of In the Game. We brought you stories about business, about basketball, and even a little maple syrup. We hope you enjoyed the ride along the way.
Be sure to check back for more videos featuring the best stories in sports. We will catch you next time.